got a backlog of things, and they've had to put on hold because of the coronavirus thing, and not knowing about their work and income and stuff. So they've kind of hit pause on a few things other than the Splatter Western. But as soon as that work picks back up, they've got a backlist of things. So I think we're going to independently publish it.
Yeah, so you keep mentioning the Splatter Westerns, which Jared talked about when he was on. The first one was by uh,
Wiley Young, yeah,
okay, yeah, and then the second one by M. Innenbach, who you mentioned. And
right.
so you guys are kind of just passing this off. They're all self-contained, but they're contributing to this new thing that you guys have conceived, basically.
Yeah, well, and they are self-contained stories, but here's something I don't know if Jared knows this or not. Honestly, um, Mike's book introduces a character who comes in for a few pages and he goes on, and he's mentioned once or twice after that. Um, but then when my book comes out, which is the next one, which is called Dust, you realize, hey, that's the main character of my book. So there is a connection there, but only because Mike and I know each other and we were writing at the same time. And I was like, hey, why don't we have a little crossover here, And so in my book, I mention meeting Carl Beck from his book, and then I think Mike actually has a connection to Patrick C. Harrison III's Splatter Western. I'm not sure which number his will be. It's going to be, you know, 5 or 6 or something like that. I don't know, but he has a small connection there that you'll have to have read both to kind of pick up on the Easter egg.
So all you guys are about some Western cinema, right? And Western stories. Like how deep do you go with it? Like Zane Grey or Clint Eastwood, Sergio Leone? What?
I love Sergio Leone. I love Clint Eastwood. I love one of my favorite, if not, it's possibly my favorite Western movie of all time. Is Once Upon a Time in the West, and it actually doesn't have Clint Eastwood in it. It's Charles Bronson, Henry Fonda. Oh gosh, I can't remember the other guy's name, but he's terrific. Um, and it's got a big cast. It's a long movie. Sergio Leone. Terrific music and cinematography. It's just fantastic. It's one of my favorites. Of course, I love the Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and the what is it called? For a Fistful of Dollars and a few dollars more that came before it. I love those. I'm a big fan of Unforgiven and Tombstone. I think that's one of Kurt Russell's best roles ever. Val Kilmer was cool, but Kurt Russell outshined him to me. So I'm in the minority. I always watch it for Kurt's performance. But yeah, I'm a big fan of a good Western. And when Patrick messaged me about possibly doing a Splatter Western, my first reaction was actually no. I love Westerns, but I was like, I don't know how to write a Western. God in heaven, that's going to be so much research and yada yada. But anyways, like I initially said, man, I'm not sure I can do that, but let me give you an answer in a couple of days. And then I told my wife, and then she says, I don't know what the story is, but you need to write it, and it needs to be called Dust. And as soon as she said that, suddenly I got an idea. And it came to life, and I was super, super happy with it. So I messaged Patrick back actually the same day. Rather, I was like, you know what? I'm in. I've got a story. So,
Mm. And is that going to go on indefinitely?
the Splatter Western series.
That is that going to be like a central conceit of Death's Head Press, like an ongoing thing?
Uh, I don't know for sure. I can't speak for them directly, but I do know they have expanded it recently. We started out. I think there was 8 of us, if I'm not, and I could have this wrong, so don't quote me. But I think there was 8 originally, and we were jokingly calling ourselves the Hateful Eight. And then a 9th person was added, and so then we were the Nefarious 9. And then there was a 10th and the 11th and now a 12th, and we quit trying to name it.
Just call yourselves
we're just
the Wild
Splatter
Bunch.
Western group.
Yeah, the
And,
Wild Bunch, exactly. That's
right.
the best solution.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We had to pull the number out of it, but yeah, they have been discussing, maybe keeping something. And I know I have ideas for other stories in this universe, and so does M. Innenbach and Wiley Young. There's
Isn't Brian Smith doing one now?
yes, I think he was the most recent one signed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frank asks, are there modern day Westerns without cowboys and chef? What is SHAEF? What is
I
that?
think you need sheriff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good question. I
Yeah.
guess if it was set with like I don't know, yeah, how would you do that? I'm sure there were people that lived back then that weren't, like in town. They would live, off on their own, off the grid, right? You could do it that way.
In some ways, Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia is kind of a Western that was set place after like the Wild West.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Okay, Western question. Tombstone versus Wyatt Earp.
Tombstone all day.
I suck.
I know it's not as historically accurate, but it's way more entertaining. And Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer. That's it.
Okay. Well, how about this? Let's see. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or Once Upon a Time in the West?
Once Upon a Time in the West. There's something special about that movie to me.
Mhm.
I can't totally put my finger. I think part of it is when I was a kid, my grandparents lived 100 yards down the road from me. So I saw my granddaddy every day. And he had some movies recorded on VHS tapes off of, just network TV. Had the commercials you had to fast forward through and all that. And one of them that they had was Once Upon a Time in the West. And for a long time, they wouldn't let me watch it, or because my parents didn't want me to see it, because I guess I don't know, there's no nudity in it, but I think there's a kind of a love scene in one point. But anyway, they didn't want me to see it, but I finally got to watch it, and I watched it with him, my grandfather, and it blew me away. So that's like a really important memory to me. But there was another one that was actually a modern day by the standards of, I don't mean it was in the 1800s. I mean, it was like in the 60s or whenever the movie came out. Bad Day at Black Rock with Spencer Tracy. That is an awesome Western movie. Everybody needs to go and see. Really great.
My creative writing teacher in high school showed us the opening scene with the bounty hunters that are going after the harmonica guy. It was like because it was such an iconic scene. It's like they're real quirky characters. One's trying to sleep, and the fly keeps landing on his face, and the other one's preoccupied with like rain dropping on him or something. And he used that as an example of how to like kind of chew the scenery when you're writing, fiction.
Yeah.
But I would have to go with Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I like the way that Blondie and the other guy's kind of, antagonistic relationship develops, and how they're like unacknowledged, allies in a way, even if they're constantly having to check each other, Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say, it's kind of interesting how the Western kind of died. It used to be one of the most popular genres in the United States. There were a ton of Western movies, a ton of Western books. I think Louis L'Amour is still one of the best-selling authors in the United States. But at some point, it just kind of tapered off and died. Like, I can only think of two contemporary literary Westerns, which is the Sister Brothers and Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian.
Well, the thing is, William W. Johnstone, he still sells, even though he's dead, his brand of Westerns still sell like 1 million copies a year. And it's because there's still I think it's because there's still so many old people who buy them. Not that only old people would read them, because I love William W. Johnstone Westerns. But that audience is there. It's just they're not part of like the mainstream literary crowd or any type of mainstream, which is weird. Like, it's something that used to be so popular, but now it's like a niche, and I don't really understand that.
Right. Probably like a mix of factors, I suppose. Like political correctness probably is one, because let's face it, a lot of Westerns, they did not depict Native Americans in the best light. And, we're a lot more aware now of just how badly the Native Americans were fucked over.
Well, yeah, but I've been on and off. I've been reading The Vanishing American, and I don't think that Zane Grey. I think Zane Grey understood them to a great degree. Have you read any Zane Grey, Chris?
I have not. No.
This was my first exposure to him, and it was amazing.
Yeah, I read.
Really, Zane Grey's amazing. You say?
I think so. What were you going to say, Ben?
I was going to say I read Riders of the Purple Sage, and I couldn't get into it. It felt like there was like just too much like soap opera-y kind of romance. It was like this like weird artificial romance that didn't ring true to me at all.
Well,
what did you read that you liked, Jeremy?
Let's see. Like I said, Man of the Forest was my first exposure to Zane Grey. But Rogue River Feud, about this World War I veteran who comes home and starts trying to fish for a living, and he meets this drunkard guy who can't stay out of the bottle, and they run into trouble with the locals who say, this is our river. This is our area of the river. You don't fish here. And it opens up this huge feud between, their guys and his guys. And I think Rogue River Feud is actually my favorite of his that I've read so far. But Man of the Forest was my first exposure. And, it was interesting because the guy had a pet bobcat that would, come and go throughout the plot. But it's like he was more of a friend than a pet to him. And I just like the way Zane Grey writes that kind of stuff. It's not contrived or lame to me, but I guess Ben thought so, right?
Well, the part Riders of the Purple Sage was, I do have one of his other books. I think it's called like Spirit of the Border or something like that. So I'm going to give that a try at some point.
Which one would you recommend to me, Jeremy?
Rogue River Feud. Am I looking at it right here? Is it? Yeah. Okay, that's not the. Here's the cover. Here's the real cover. But this is the one about the fishermen feuding, or and the guy comes back from World War I and kills a guy himself. Never mind. Okay, comes back from World War I and and gets into trouble with the locals. That's the one I would recommend. It's a very long 200 pages, I will warn you, but I think it's worth.
That sounds great. I can't wait to read it.
Has anyone here ever read Lee Florin? He's kind of like a Western writer that's kind of disappeared or didn't no one remembers him, but some people do.
Who?
Lee Florin. He wrote North the Powder River, The Gringo, and a ton of other stuff.
Oh yeah, The Gringo I think is one of his is a pretty famous one. Yeah.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
I can't find him.
I never used to like Westerns until Joe Lansdale, reading some Joe Lansdale Westerns. So I'm more.
I didn't like the Magic Mountain. Not Magic Mountain. I love Magic Mountain. The Joe Lansdale's Magic Wagon. To me, that felt like just. Oh, I hated that book.
Oh, I didn't. That's my least favorite Joe Lansdale book. Is that one? Yeah.
What do you think of? What do you think of Lansdale's Westerns, Chris? You read any?
I have not read any of his Westerns. I actually just got I think it was The Thicket the other day.
Oh, that's a great book.
It's going to be my next read. But I have read several of his Hap and Leonard novels. I'm a huge fan of those.
Yeah.
And I've read some of his short stories. I think I think very highly of him. Yes.
Yeah, The Thicket's great. You're gonna love that book.
Yeah, one Western I'd really recommend is The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. I can't remember what the name of the author is. Yeah, I know that there's not much. Yeah, B. Travin, that's what it is. I know not much is known about them. It's highly suspected that they were a German writer who moved to Mexico at some point. But I really think that's a really great book. He was
I've seen the movie that with Bogart.
Yeah, that's what it's famous for.
I loved the movie.
Oh, that sounds real old school if it's got Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah, it was 30s or 40s. It was before Bogart got huge.
Yeah, and B. Traven, he was an anarchist, and you can kind of get that sense from this book. There's a sort of definitely a hatred and fear of authority that runs through it, as well as a skepticism towards the gold rush, because that's basically what it's about. People, trying to get rich off of gold and getting fucked over.
To live back in those days in the Wild West and to function in such a way that you're somewhat independent, I think they would have all had to have had a healthy dose of, hating authority and kind of, I mean, right, to survive in those times, right?
Right. I think that's probably what appeals in it to a lot of people. There's probably a sense of, on one hand, be able to hate authority, and on the other hand, like still being able to get one over on the bad guys, since you're probably like a bounty hunter or a cowboy or something like that.
Mhm. So, wow, that was a nice little excursion into the Wild West, huh? All brought about because of the splatter westerns of Death's Head Press. Let's tie it back around to Death's Head Press. Um, I think that they're a good fit for your work because aside from a few bumps in the road at the beginning, they seem to be championing free speech, in a way that some presses are too chicken shit to. So, for instance, they picked up, one author's work who was he was pulled from publication but shortly before it was to be published, from what I understand. And so, they're a good fit for right now. I would say they're the go-to press personally if I were going to publish with them. And they've got a lot of good ideas, like original ideas with the Splatter Western thing. They can. That's uniquely theirs to coin, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely them, and they're good guys. They've always shot straight with me. I've only worked with a handful of presses, and I'm glad to be able to say that I have not had any of them screw me over. Um, and the Death's Head guys, I've kind of been with them from the beginning. I was in And Hell Followed, which was their, flagship, first release. And then the Hard Goodbye was actually their first novel published. It came out like February 1st. It was 15 days roughly after And Hell Followed. And so I've kind of been along with them since the beginning, and they've been nothing but awesome. They're straight. They pay you. They take care of you. They promote you. They're just one of the best experiences I've had in the industry so far.
Yeah. But oh shit, what was I gonna? It was fairly important. Oh,